Julius Caesar had one belief: never let the people you raised get close enough to hurt you. Steve Jobs believed the same. Both broke the rule. Both were destroyed by men they chose themselves. March 15th, 44 BC, Rome. Caesar has been warned. A letter naming every conspirator is in his hand. He does not read it. April 11th, 1985, Cupertino. Jobs sits in a boardroom he built. The man he hired to run Apple has just called for his removal. The vote is unanimous. Two rooms, 2,000 years apart, the same blindness. How did the richest men of their centuries walk into it? Let's find out. Rome, 46 BC. Caesar returns from Gaul with something no Roman had ever seen before. More gold than the treasury itself held, silver by the ton, artwork stripped from 100 temples, cattle and grain enough to feed the city for months. The triumph lasted 4 days. The crowd was given free grain, free wine, and cash. Every citizen paid personally by Caesar. He did not just win a war, he bought a city. Historians estimate Caesar's personal fortune at the peak of his power somewhere around $100 billion in modern equivalent, not including the Roman treasury he controlled as dictator, which multiplies that figure several times over. He owned Gaul. He owned pieces of Egypt. He owned senators. One man. Every denarius of it. Steve Jobs peaked at around $10.2 billion, most of it in Disney stock from selling Pixar. His Apple shares? He sold nearly all of them when he was fired in 1985. He kept a single share. When he came back in 1997, he asked for a salary of $1 a year. The gap is not close. Caesar controlled a continent's tax base. Jobs controlled a product line. Winner: Julius Caesar. Nobody in history bought a city the way Caesar did. But raw wealth has never been the same as raw genius. And in round 2, we find out that the man who owned less might have seen more than any human being alive. Cupertino, 2005. Jobs walks into a meeting with his top engineers and tells them Apple is going to build a phone. The engineers push back. Apple does not make phones. The market is dominated by BlackBerry and Nokia. The margins are terrible. The carriers control everything. Jobs does not argue. He tells them the phone will have no keyboard, no stylus, one button, and it will kill everything else on the market within 5 years. They thought he was insane. He beat his own prediction by 2 years. Caesar had the same instinct 20 centuries earlier. 58 BC. He looks at Gaul, a fractured land of tribes nobody in Rome cared about, and sees something no other Roman could see. Not a war, a blueprint. He would spend 8 years there, dozens of battles, 2 invasions of Britain, the first Roman army to cross the Rhine. When he was done, Gaul was not conquered, it was rewritten. Both men saw the same thing in different centuries, not what the world was, what the world was about to become. Winner? Steve Jobs. Caesar saw further than any Roman alive, but Jobs saw further than anyone who has ever lived. And when a man sees what no one else can, the people around him eventually turn on him. Round 3 is where the knives come out. 1983, Cupertino. Jobs makes the hire that will destroy him. He personally recruits John Scully from Pepsi, flies to New York, sits with him for hours, and asks him whether he wants to spend the rest of his life selling sugar water or come to Cupertino and change the world. Scully says yes. 2 years later, Scully calls the board and forces Jobs out of the company Jobs founded. Jobs was 30 years old. He had just been fired by the man he personally chose to run his empire. Caesar made the same mistake, with the same result. Marcus Brutus was not just a senator. He was Caesar's protege. Caesar had spared his life after the Civil War, promoted him, named him praetor. Some Romans whispered that Brutus was Caesar's own son. On the Ides of March, Brutus was there, knife in hand. Caesar's last words, according to the legend, were not defiance, they were disbelief. "You too, my child?" Both men made the same misjudgment. They believed loyalty was owed to them because they had given it first. It never is. The difference is what came next. Jobs was fired at 30. He had time. He built Next, he bought Pixar, he came back to Apple 12 years later and made it the most valuable company on earth. Caesar was 55. He had no second act. The knives ended everything.
Winner, Steve Jobs. Same betrayal, same blindness. One survived it, the other did not. But surviving betrayal is not the same as being untouchable. And round 4 asks a darker question. What kind of devotion makes a man believe he cannot be touched in the first place?
There is a word Roman soldiers used for Caesar that they did not use for other generals: imperator. It did not mean emperor, not yet. It meant something older, something closer to the one we follow. Soldiers named their sons after him. Legions refused to serve under anyone else. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon with a single legion, he was not gambling on strategy. He was gambling on love. He won the gamble. His men would have marched into fire for him. Many of them did. 2,000 years later, people camp on sidewalks for a phone. Not for a discount, not for exclusivity, for the ritual of being there when Jobs, or the machine Jobs built, reveals the next object. Apple launches did not feel like product releases. They felt like sermons. One man on a stage in a black turtleneck, and a room full of people who believed him more than they believed their own instincts. That devotion is not marketing. It is something older. It is the same thing Caesar's soldiers felt when they saw him ride to the front of the line. But here is what devotion does to the man receiving it. It confirms every instinct. It silences every doubt. It builds, day by day, the certainty that the ordinary rules do not apply. Caesar walked into the Senate on March 15th because thousands of people had spent years telling him he was untouchable. Winner, Julius Caesar. No product launch will ever compete with soldiers dying for your name. But devotion is fuel, not structure. And in round 5, we find out which of these two men built something that could outlive the love, and which one didn't. March 15th, 44 BC, Caesar dies in the Senate. Within 48 hours, Rome is on fire. The system he built, the reforms, the calendar, the alliances, the loyalty of the legions, all of it required him. His nephew Octavian would eventually rebuild something from the wreckage, but it took 13 more years of civil war, 3 fleets destroyed, and hundreds of thousands dead. Caesar did not leave a machine. He left a vacuum. Everything he had built ran through one man. When the man was gone, the structure collapsed inward. October 2011, Cupertino. Jobs is gone. Apple opens the next morning. The iPhone 4S ships on schedule. The company continues executing the roadmap Jobs designed. Tim Cook, Jobs' hand-picked successor, takes over without a single disruption. Over the next decade, Apple triples in value. It becomes the first $3 trillion company in history, running the playbook Jobs wrote before he left. That is not luck. That is design. Jobs spent his last years teaching, documenting, embedding. He built Apple University to encode the philosophy. He named his successor publicly and privately. He rebuilt the company so it could survive without the man who created it. Caesar built an empire that needed him breathing to function. Jobs built a machine that did not need him at all. Winner? Steve Jobs. Caesar's death broke Rome. Jobs' absence barely made the stock blink. That is not a difference of talent. It is a difference of what each man believed he owed the future. Final score, Steve Jobs, 3 rounds. Julius Caesar, 2. Jobs wins the vision, the comeback, and the machine. Caesar wins the net worth and the cult. Julius Caesar was the most powerful human being of the ancient world. He bought a city with the spoils of Gaul. He commanded legions who would have died for his name. He built an empire that ran on one heartbeat, his own, and walked into a room full of knives because he could not imagine a version of reality where the people who loved him would ever stop.
Steve Jobs was pushed out of his own company at 30. He came back at 42. He saw a future no one else could see, and he built the most valuable enterprise in the history of capitalism around it. And he spent his final years making sure it could run without him. Caesar had more. Jobs kept more. And in the end, the richer man might simply be the one who understood that no empire, no matter how loved, should ever depend on a single heartbeat.
But let's be honest, if thousands of people spent years telling you that you were untouchable, would you still see the knives coming? Or would you walk into the room anyway? Leave your answer in the comments.